thing with cookieless future, if you haven't been thinking about cookieless in the past, it's going to be a challenge for you today, right? I think the reality is a lot of folks should be in that space where cookieless is part of their media plan and their targeting plan as a whole. Thinking about cookies today, you're in a situation where yes, deprecation is starting now. The announcement came out last week or what have you on the 1% deprecation through the end of the year. But I think the reality is there's entire mix of targeting that you have to think about. And if you don't have that now and today, like that's something that you should start thinking about kind of immediately. And if you're not, I equate it to like working out. The best time to start was yesterday. It's the second best time to start is now. So thinking about targeting parameters such as private marketplaces, programmatic guarantees, first-party data. There's a lot of opportunity out there that don't involve cookies that really allow us to be robust with our targeting.
You mentioned you've been thinking about this for a while. Have you begun any testing, and even before the deprecation started? And have you learned anything yet?
Yeah, I mean the short answer is yes, right? I think with cookies, it's been a lot of, at least from a content perspective, it's been a lot of paint by numbers, right? You see an item like a shoe or a thing you saw on a retail site, and then now you want to get to another site, and then you're getting that same thing targeted at you with pretty ugly layout, if I'm being honest, right? But the reality is when you actually think about these other targeting parameters, such as contextual, such as first-party data, looking at publisher first-party data, you can actually create better narratives. And that's really what's interesting about this. I think content and creative are going to be far more paramount now, especially in the programmatic and the digital space, than even in the past, given the fact that it's not just take the assets, reuse them inside of a template, and then retarget anymore. It's about thinking and making choiceful decisions about knowing your consumer and what you're going to do with the content, which will in turn allow you to think about, I think, less about attribution and counting the dollars versus how do we now create greater impact and drive a further ROI. And if we're doing that, then it's about generating dollars for businesses rather than, again, counting them.
If we think that third-party cookies are not going to be going away until by the end of the year, why is it important to move fast? And why do you think what's the benefit of moving sooner rather than later?
Well, like I said, I think the luxury that we have today is that they still exist. So part of your media plan, this comes back to the dollars and cents that you're investing, are going to be placed in those retargeting buckets, and they do allow you to have action that can drive some of those performance outcomes you're looking for. But I think especially with a content lens today, this is the time to do things like multivariate testing. This is the time to do things like relevant messaging. And the reason being is when cookies are gone, those are going to be the mainstays, right? And that's what's going to be interesting about, I think, 2024, at the end of 2024 into 2025. I think not only are the marketing plans going to look a lot different, but I think the production and the creative plans are going to have to look different too, to fill these voids that, what we used to do, again, paint by numbers, a little bit of retargeting, is going to have to be a little bit more thinking involved.
One of the things we've heard is that it's not always clear who at big brands and agencies, who drives the decision, who owns this. How have you figured that out? Is that a challenge for the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the reality of it is you're dealing with something new, right? And I think about cookies, this might be controversial, but like a lot like fossil fuels, right? Like they got an industry started, right? Like with everything we do in automotive and travel and things like that. Cookies got digital marketing started, so it's a mainstay for us. And now, just like we've seen in the alternative energy revolution, we're going to start seeing, I think, similar concepts in the alternative targeting revolution, if you will, right? But just like electric vehicles, they've been around forever. It's just now they're going to have to be invested in. And I think that is where, if you use the word hard, some of the challenges come in. But I think the word I would use is uncomfortable because it's not something that we're used to. But these are the times that we need to be educating ourselves. We need to think about, look at the partners that we're working with, look at the industry and say, we expect a certain solution around cookieless that will allow us to have the scale and the reach and the relevance we're looking for, but at the same time, help us turn it into standard operating procedures.
Lastly, what is the privacy imperative that you're looking to address?
So even without cookieless, I think privacy is just paramount in our space. If we are looking at our consumers with and thinking about their data, we have a sacred, responsibility, frankly speaking, to ensure that we're taking that consumer, my data, your data as an individual, ensuring that we're protecting that in the best way possible. Having things like clean rooms, having things like privacy compliant databases that allow us to be able to then take other sets of data to match against, to identify those high value audiences, helps us really create key structures of targeting as well as messaging that otherwise we couldn't, right? But I think we have to think about privacy beyond just the idea of protecting our consumers' data, and also thinking about the value exchange associated with it. Now, in 2024 and beyond, right, I think Web3 has died down. I think Bored Apes and gorillas and all that stuff has gone away a little bit, but I think there's going to be a utility of things like blockchain and Web3 technology in the loyalty space. And in a cookieless world, CRM and loyalty are going to be critical. So if you and me were sitting there and we're having a conversation with an airline or a retail shoe company or a business like a movie theater, we want to be able to, they're giving us free things now, but all those things are sitting on their servers, right? And then they're opting us in to be able to retarget off of it, versus putting these things on, let's call it a blockchain, let's call it a record-based system, where we can then take this information, and you and me, we can own that, and then we can trade that back to the brand for that value exchange. I think it's important for us to think about, again, privacy, not just based on protecting consumer data, but also thinking about it from the perspective of how we can bring more value to the consumer, and loyalty is going to be a key to do that.